Well, hi, this is Faith, Culture, and Society. I'm John Kinzer, and this is Series 3, Session 5. Our topic is Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. In our last session, we learned how John Quincy Adams was one of the great public servants in American history. He served as an ambassador, a senator, Secretary of State, president, and then something that no one else had ever done, he served in the House of Representatives for 17 years after being president. So a total of 52 years in public service. William McKinley often gave tremendous speeches, and he said this, and I'm going to ask you, which president do you think he's referring to? Quote, "The purposes of God working through the ages were perhaps more clearly revealed to him than to any other." Well, if you guessed Abraham Lincoln, you guessed correctly. But Lincoln did not know Christ in a personal way until late in life. We do see in Lincoln a man who was prepared by God for a titanic work, a titanic task that he would one day face as president. God's fingerprints are all over his life. Listen to some of these things that prepared him. He was born on the frontier in Kentucky in 1809. He had humble roots. He was born in a log cabin, no floor, dirt floor. He learned to be honest. In fact, his nickname was Honest Abe. In one instance, he walked many miles to a home just to return a few cents from a person who had overpaid for the item at his store. He worked hard. He cleared land with an axe. He split trees. He was known as the rail splitter. He split logs with wedges and made them into split rail fences. He taught himself at home. His mother taught him the Bible and how to read, but he loved to read. He ran for state representative in Springfield, Illinois, and he said something about his faith about this time. He says, "That I am not a member of any Christian church, it is true, but I've never denied the truths of the scriptures, and I have never spoken with disrespect of religion in general or of any denomination of Christians." Lincoln often used jokes as a way to relax and enjoy people. He excelled at telling stories. A close friend said this, "He saw ludicrous elements in everything, and he could either narrate some story from his storehouse of jokes, or else he could improvise one. In anything and everything, Lincoln saw something humorous." In 1854, Lincoln was angered by the extension of slavery. Congress had passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and he became politically active again. He helped to found a new political party, the Republican Party, in 1854. He ran for the Senate seat in Illinois against Stephen Douglas, a powerful senator. And he became nationally known as he went in debates against Douglas. They were the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and they were famous. He lost the election to Douglas. But 2 years later, in 1860, he was the Republican candidate for president. He had a clear voice for banning slavery in the territories and beginning to push back and eliminate slavery. In a close election in 1860, with 4 candidates, Lincoln won the majority of the electoral vote, and so he became president. Now we know the weight that Lincoln felt of being president with the threat that states would secede from the Union because of his election. He was walking on a bomb, ready to explode and divide the nation. He told his secretary, "I have driven many times upon my knees I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My own wisdom and that of all about me seemed insufficient for the day. 1 week after his inauguration, 7 southern states seceded and they formed the Confederacy in 1861. He would now have to prepare the army, try to prevent other states from secession, find good generals to defeat the Confederacy. In addition, he had to stand for preserving the Union, to rally the northern states into a willingness to fight and sacrifice for preserving the Union. He also had to keep foreign nations from recognizing, especially Britain and France, from recognizing the Confederacy and helping them. This was a daunting task. No president has ever had a task this big. The Southern Confederacy added 4 more states when Lincoln called up 75,000 volunteers to serve in the Army. Now there were 11 states in the Southern Confederacy, 23 states in the Union. The Union lost battle after battle. The Confederacy had the advantage. They had a large land area, very rural, and the Union would need to conquer that whole territory and control it to win the war. He persisted in fighting for the Union. He became a man of suffering. I think he went through a refining process. I think it was a painful trial that few people ever know. Lincoln felt the war went on longer than he thought it would. He thought, quote, God permits it for some wise purpose of his own, mysterious and unknown to us. He who made the world still governs it. So Lincoln searched and prayed and learned to trust God's sovereignty and God's ways, which are way beyond our understanding. God was leaving his imprint on Lincoln's life. We again see the fingerprint of God in the first significant victory for the Union, the Battle of Antietam. Now Lincoln decided to free the slaves. With the Emancipation Proclamation, he freed the slaves in the South, and he addressed his cabinet. This is what he said that day, quote, I made a solemn vow before God that if General Lee were driven back from Pennsylvania, I would crown the result by the declaration of freedom to the slaves. Well, this same year, in 1862, Willie, his son, died. And many noticed that Lincoln was, by the way, Willie was only 12 years old. And many noticed that Lincoln carried a Bible more often. He spent more time in prayer. He began attending church every single Sunday. And the pastor of his church said this. He said that the death of Willie and Lincoln's visit to Gettysburg, where the big battle had taken place, led Lincoln to a personal faith in Christ. Here's an interesting view that Lincoln proclaimed a day of fasting for the nation. He said this, we have forgotten God. We've forgotten his gracious hand that preserved us in peace and multiplied and strengthened us. We've vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all these blessings were produced by the superior wisdom and virtue of our own. In inaugural address, in his second term, only 45 days before he was assassinated, he said this, if God will continue it until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid with another drawn by the sword, so it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. He's quoting Psalm 19. He lost dear things. He suffered. He pondered why these things were so, and he trusted God. That's the message of Abraham Lincoln. America never had a greater president. Thank you, and God bless you.